Good morning, everybody. I'm so excited to be bringing this episode of Tech Thursday to you guys. My name is Jonathan Price. If you have never watched one of these, and if you're new to the group, welcome. Every Thursday, we dive into film scoring from a tech standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from you name it. We will try to write it and try to figure out how it's supposed to sound. We go from using loops and stems and anything is eligible to be covered in these videos. I've got my cup of coffee and I'm ready to go, so I hope you guys are too. It is a beautiful Thursday morning here in Denver, Colorado in the United States. So if you guys are watching over the pond or somewhere else, it should be wherever you guys are listening and whatever time it is. I hope you guys are throwing back a cold one, or you've got a nice warm cup of coffee or tea and you're just ready to sit and enjoy this. I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of playing necessarily. We're going to be talking, I'm getting ready to do a series over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see how it'll be at least 7 for sure. How I've set this up. So this first week isn't included in the 7. I'm just going to talk about how these are going to go. So over these next 7 weeks, and I guess 8 weeks, this one included, we're going to be talking about how to score the emotion of a film. And you may be thinking, oh, come on, this is ridiculous. Well, we already know how to score the emotion. We can score sad, we can score happy, we know all that kind of stuff. Yes, but it doesn't sound good. Unless you really, really understand all of the synonyms and things that go along with some of these words that directors are describing, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt, and you're going to find yourself with a lot of music coming back from the director saying, yeah, this is close, but not quite what we're looking for. It needs to be a little more happy, or a little more interested, or proud, or respected, or all these different words that you're like, how do I even write for this? What in the world are they talking about? So I'm going to try to bridge the gap between composer and director. So we're going to look at, I have this wheel here. It's called my wheel of emotion, if you will. And I don't remember where I found this. I've had this for years, and I use it on nearly every film because a lot of times you're going to get directors who they'll say, okay, we want this scene to sound sad. Okay, so you as a director think, or you as a composer will think, okay, sad, so that's right here. Well, if we look at sad, we have lonely, vulnerable, despair, guilty, depressed, hurt, and then from those we have even these little more subsections. So in lonely we have you feel isolated and abandoned, victimized, fragile, grief, powerless, ashamed, remorseful, empty, inferior, disappointed, embarrassed. So all of these little teeny tiny things go into sad. Now also you can combine these with things like disgust and anger, and all of these right here can be, they can all be combined. I don't know what just happened. Sorry. Okay. So we're gonna go through each and every single one of these interior emotions, and we're gonna talk and we're gonna score something based on what these emotions are. So, for instance, next week we're just gonna start with surprised, and we're gonna go all the way around the circle, and we'll end with happy. So the first thing I want to talk about really quick, and this video is going to be a lot shorter than my normal tech videos, so just know that. The first thing I want to talk about first is when you're dealing with a director, when you try to talk music theory to them, and I'm sure a lot of you have already heard this, but when you try to talk in a musical language to them and their eyes start to glaze over, that's when you know you've lost them completely. You can't use things like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed this passage. I hope, I used this modulating goodness, I've talked to so many directors. I used this 1-4-5 progression, and then I went to a minor 2 to go to a minor 6, so then I could transpose it into the harmonic minor of this, and that created this little melody and this motif. And I used these counterpoint melodies to go into this new section where I use chromatic mediants, and I used these different scales and all. Don't say any of that stuff. Unless they are an actual musician and they start to talk to you like that. Even then, you have to gauge exactly how much musical knowledge they have, because I've had directors who've come to me and said, hey, I play the guitar, I really love music, and I think it should sound like this, with a try putting a minor third over the melody, or try putting a major chord over a minor chord, and just random stuff that they may talk about it, but it doesn't really make sense. So that's where you as a composer kind of have to use a little bit of discretion in how you handle these situations. So when you're talking to a director, you want to use buzzwords like these. And the only buzzwords for them are emotions, because they are focused on capturing the facial expressions of the actor. They are talking about editing and cuts, and sometimes in audio, a lot of times they don't know, or they won't say. They'll say, hey, this needs to be louder or softer, or it needs to have more body, or it needs to have more. It doesn't sound brittle enough, or it doesn't sound. They'll use the descriptive words, like it doesn't sound perplexing enough. And you're like, okay, what in the world does perplexing sound like? Or they'll say, oh, this sounds too scared, and we want it to sound more insecure. You're like, what? So we're going to talk about that. And when you're talking to a director, it's important to use these types of words, and use words that maybe they didn't associate with the scene, and explain why you chose what you did, instead of, hey, how does this sound? Is this what you're looking for? So if you submit them a piece that, let's say, is that's kind of an angry scene, and there you have two people who are in a heated argument, and you have, let's just a guy and a girl, and they are angry over something. Maybe he was unfaithful to her, or maybe she did something that wasn't appropriate. I don't know, whatever it is. So let's just say that he is feeling, he would feel, let's say, humiliated and disrespected. Okay, so we're kind of in this range right here. Well, let's say she feels disappointed and revolted, or because there was a miscommunication in how they both felt. Okay, well, so you now you have two options to score. You can score two things from her being disappointed and revolted, so you can use any sorts of instruments that may sound revolting or disappointing. Insert accordion joke here. Don't hit me. I love the accordion. Anyway, gopher. And then you have another thing to score up here where he felt humiliated and disrespected. So in this wheel, you can really narrow down how you want to score something just based on this. And so you can go to your piano, and so we normally associate sad with minor, and then happy with major. Okay, so that's typically what we have. So in these circumstances, a lot of times staying away from triads can be a really beneficial thing if you're trying to create some sort of ambiguous tension, or anything that doesn't need a strong, hey, we're sad, we're frustrated, or we're really happy, Something like super joyful, triumphant, and things like that. So I can't stress to you enough that talking to a director in a director's language will 9 times out of 10 get you to the place of scoring something the right way. Also, when sending a piece over to a director for, I don't know if validation is correct, but just to see if you're on the right track, don't ever send a track saying, "Hey, is this what you're looking for?" Don't do that. Either one, if you do that, you better write a long paragraph as to why you did that, so that the director can say. So let's say, for example, you sent a track over and it was just one track and you were saying, "Hey, well, how does this sound? Is this kind of what you're looking for?" You better have a description in that track that says, "I used the piano because I wanted it to represent her, and the melody the piano plays is supposed to be representing the way she's looking at him, and the look on her face to me says more frustrated and sorrowful rather than disappointed and revolted." Or you may be saying, "Hey, I used a low sweeping pad because he felt humiliated and disrespected," and you want to describe and explain what you used and why you used it. That way the director can say, okay, he is actually taking an interest in this film. Now, if you don't do that and you just want a generic "am I in the ballpark," give them at least 3 examples or 3 different mixdowns of the same type of cue. So for example, if you have a happy cue, do it in 3 different ways. So let's say you have a little melody. Okay, let's just use that. Okay, so you can put that in just the piano way up here. Okay, cute and pretty, really childlike. And then you orchestrate it. You do it in the piano and you're doing it. Okay. Or you do it in this huge, massive orchestration that sounds incredible. And then you do it in kind of a more somber tone where you have it in a lower piano register and it's a transitional thing. Okay, something like that. Okay, so it's not too difficult to place a melody in a genre or style of emotion, especially when you have a wheel like this that kind of says, okay, you have a director that says, we need this scene to be fearful, and she has to have a lot of fear, and she's feeling. You always ask a director what the character is feeling, not what their interpretation is. So, okay, is the character supposed to feel, are they worried? Are they feeling worthless? Are they feeling nervous? Or what is it exactly that they're feeling? Because those things in particular sound completely different. And once you really start paying attention to how music is constructed and when it goes along with the facial expressions and voices of what's going on, particularly this can be solved with instruments, but when you look at each one of these words individually, helpless and frightened sound super different. They almost sound like sad and angry. I mean, as far as that is. So when I was saying about staying away from thirds and things like that, if you have these open fifth chords that are kind of ambiguous, you can do a lot of things. Suspensions. Layered chords. So I have a C suspension over a G minor chord without the G. Okay. So there's all sorts of things you can do. One of my favorites is using a C suspension over a D major chord without the third. Because the third will tell you, okay, what is this? The third guarantees you the emotion, but a lot of times the director doesn't want you to give away the emotion. It wants you to support the emotion. So you take out the third. And if you want to add it back in, let's add the minor. Okay, now we have an actually happy sounding chord because we have an F, A, and the C. And we don't hear a C sus over, or a D minor over a C sus. We don't hear that. Our ears hear this. Oh, this is actually kind of happy and successful, or curious, or valued. Okay, so things like this, you kind of play around with these chords and say, okay, that's not where that chord is supposed to go, but it kind of hints in that direction. Okay, so that's where this wheel can come in really, really handy. So you don't need to know a whole lot of music theory to be able to use this. You just need to be a little bit more aware of what's happening in your film and what's happening in the people who are in the film. And the director may say, hey, you need to score. For instance, there was a film that I was doing a couple of months ago, and there was this husband and wife, and they were having a serious discussion. And the director said, I have no idea what the music is supposed to sound like. And I was like, okay, well, what are they supposed to be feeling? Knowing full well what they were feeling because it was on the screen and what they were saying, their facial and body language. So I just asked, and I said, well, what are they feeling? What are they supposed to be talking about? What's going on? And the scene was the husband, his mom had just died, and the husband and wife were in the middle of an argument, or this long drawn out episode and then his mom died, and then they kind of brought them back together. And so he's like, I don't know. The director didn't know whether to score the music should come from the husband or from the wife. And I said, well, there's a lot of different places it can come from. It can come from the husband and wife, obviously, come from the stone in the background. It can come from the environment. It can come from, and then once I started talking about this, they got excited. I said, you could also score it from the mother's perspective. You could score it from, because they're sad about the relationship being over between the son and the mother. However, there's this husband and wife that are fighting, that are having this long drawn out argument. If you score this from a child's perspective about the mother, it'll glue the scene together. And so what that means is you score the husband, you score the husband and the mother relationship, and you score it from a sense of loss. And when you think of somebody you've lost, typically you think of their earliest memories of you think of the earliest times that you met them or were engaged with them. And so a lot of times for a parent child relationship, you go back to that childhood. Excuse me. You go back to that childhood, and you think of light and happy and a little airy, and where the child felt accepted and successful and confident and valued and all of these things, where you can put them in. You can also do it in a sad way. So, for example, if I were to play it still has this kind of sad tone to it. When you put it with a sad picture, it's kind of childlike. Okay, so now we don't know if we're in C or if we're in F, because I just used C suspended and a B2 or a F, or it's a B flat. Be a B flat. What is that? B flat 7. Sorry. Anyway, I haven't had my full cup of coffee yet, so I apologize. So anyway, so I haven't really used a whole lot of chords that have said, yes, we're fully sad and we are fully happy. No, we're kind of somewhere in between. We're not entirely sure, because we're watching three things unfold. We would watch the husband reaction, the wife reaction, and the husband's internal reaction of losing his mother. Okay, so a lot of those things you have to think about. And so over the next 7 weeks, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to talk about each and every single one of these, and we're going to I'm going to find some clips that I have from different videos and things like that talk about these sorts of emotions. And if I don't have a clip, we'll just talk about it, and we'll try to compose something, and we'll talk about the differences between each and every one of these emotions. So I will post this wheel along with this video. So if you guys have any questions, or you have a suggestion in the next coming weeks, or you have like general questions about, okay, well, what in the world is insecure going to sound like, or how in the world do you write something rushed or overwhelmed, or anything like that, and you have comments and questions that I can narrow down, that would be absolutely fantastic. So get those to me, and we're gonna launch on this wonderful, very rarely talked about, at least in the circles I run in, very rarely talked about issue of bridging the gap between the director and the composer, and how to talk to them and find the meaning within the meaning within the meanings, and then be able to write it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know there wasn't a lot of tech per se, but I hope you got a little bit out of this, and I hope this sets the launching pad for the next couple of weeks. Enjoy, and you guys have a wonderful, blessed weekend. I am going to get myself moved out of where we are, and we're going to have some fun this weekend. So hopefully I'll be back next week, and we'll talk to you guys later.